Now on Indianapolis This Week.
And that stuck with me and will be with me till the day that I die.
The man in charge of Indiana's National Guard reaches retirement. Martin Umbacher on the toll of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the biggest mission still ahead for the Guard in the Hoosier State. Plus, fleet focus.
And it's working. The vehicles are working. They're performing great.
The head of Vision Fleet answers questions about the company's contract with the city and that redacted document that got so much attention. And State Board shakeup. The new names coming to the embattled board. Will it change the tone for education discussions?
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. As we start this week, we invite you to join us on social media, whether on your smartphone or your tablet. Head to Twitter and look for our new account at Indy This Week and be part of the discussion as it happens. So let's begin. A changing of the guard for the Indiana National Guard. Major General Martin Umbacher officially retiring as the head of the state's Guard units after 11 years in that position. It's a time that's been remarkable with world events, including the September 11th terror attacks and sending tens of thousands of Hoosiers, also known as citizen soldiers, to fight wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. General Umbacher, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be with you, Rafael.
We remain a nation under terrorist threat. What role does the Indiana National Guard play? Does it play a role?
Well, it most certainly plays a role. I think you've seen many, many deployments that we've said goodbye to our soldiers and airmen, our units, and they've gone over and served all over the world. And the world's still an extremely dangerous place. So even though the deployments has lessened, yet still we have soldiers in harm's way as I speak. And I think, you know, if you don't, we just got our air wing just returned back from overseas just a few weeks ago, went over there for like 6 months. So the Air Force and the Army will still rely upon the National Guard to assist them in this fight that we have going on globally.
As a leader, you don't get to choose the environments in which you lead. You must lead when you're called. You led this National Guard through the largest deployment since World War II in both Iraq and Afghanistan. How challenging was that? And how rewarding was that call to duty?
Well, I say it was a challenge initially because you just made the comment, not since World War II. So the Indiana National Guard, both Army and Air, have not been a part of too many deployments. Probably the Air more than anyone else because of the Gulf War. We would do Southern Watch and Northern Watch with our F-16s from Terre Haute and Fort Wayne. But the Army Guard had really not deployed overseas in any contingency for 40 years. So initially, I guess it was a little bit of a shock to the system. The first thing we had was Operation Noble Eagle. It was the guarding all the infrastructure throughout the United States right after 9/11. I think everybody remembers at the first time you flew again in the airports, the president wanted to get confidence back in their citizens to fly again. I think you saw armed soldiers and airmen in those airports. Those were National Guardsmen. But we have just, I think 23,000 we've deployed since 9/11, Indiana National Guard. I think we're the 4th largest state in the number of deployed soldiers that we've had since 9/11. So the Indiana National Guard has been a huge part of the force that it's taken to go worldwide.
During last week's 500 ceremonies, you spoke to veterans, and you talked about not forgetting because of Memorial Day. You talked about frozen grief, and that really touched me because you talked about that whether you, as you move forward, when you leave this space, that you're never going to forget. And so you talked about the frozen grief and making sure that you went to the funeral of every guardsman that passed away while on duty. That had to be a very heavy job to do. To speak to every family.
It needed to be done. We need to be there for the families. I mean, as much as it's so terrible to have any loss, but when a family has lost a loved one, whether it's your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife, your mother, your father, we in the military, we need to be there for those fallen families. And I use the word frozen because, Rafael, that's what I kind of sensed. There's been 27 Indiana National Guardsmen lose their lives since 9/11. 23 of those 27 was during my watch in the last 11 years, and I did attend every one of their funerals and handed the flag of our nation to them at the gravesite. And that's what I learned, that those families are so frozen with grief at that moment. It's just so hard to comprehend of any loss. And what I referred to on those comments was one of the fallen soldier's widow, in her grief, grabbed me, and I asked her if there's anything I can do, and she just looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Do not forget him. Promise me you will not forget my husband," because he was proud of what he did. He served his country when he was asked to do, and that stuck with me and will be with me till the day that I die, that not just on Memorial Day, as a nation, we should always remember those that's given the ultimate sacrifice so we can have and live in a land of freedom, and hopefully others can gain theirs.
Yeah, and I sense that when you talk about that pain of loss, there is also the pride that the men and women do every day. That life did mean something, that there was something
Yes.
that person was fighting for.
Yes, they want, I mean, again, I learned they won't always remember. Just think of all of us. I try to put this in perspective, because you can't say, I know what you're feeling, because we don't know what they're feeling. No one wants to know what they were feeling. But if you had a son, if you had a daughter that you lost protecting this nation or going over and helping others, would you want to forget about them? Would you just want never to discuss their life? Or would you want to be able to remember them and cherish their life and celebrate their life? That's what remembering to me is all about, and we should always do that.
As you pass the baton to the next general, what challenges, what opportunities will he confront as he moves the Indiana National Guard forward?
Well, I would say you hate to talk about the challenges of budget, but you know, the military, you know, has to pay its bills, and we, during the conflict, the last 10, 11 years, it's called the supplemental. It's called the dollars that Congress has allocated for this global war on terrorism. That money with sequestration and whatnot has really kind of frozen, and we're all, as far as a nation, we all want to be as frugal as we can. We know about the deficit and how challenging it is, but I hope all the citizens realize when it comes to Congressman's discretion on how they can reduce spending, the largest proportion of that they have the decision to make is the military budget. So there's been quite a bit of pressure on the budget to the military. So I think that's going to be one that it's going to filter down to him. We may not have as much money as that I had during my tour, is to keep the readiness levels and everything it takes to be ready to go out the door in a moment's notice. So that would be a challenge. Recruiting is always a challenge. You have to tell the Guard story. We've never had a problem here in Indiana, but as the economy gets better, and our economy is doing extremely well in Indiana, sometimes it's a challenge to get our ranks filled. But yet, those are just a couple that I think might be challenges to him. But I know him well. He's a very, very experienced combat veteran, deployed twice to Bosnia, once to Bosnia, once to Iraq. So I think Brigadier General Corey Carr will be an excellent Adjutant General.
So we will be in good hands then? We
will be in good hands.
General Umberger, thank you for your service to your state and to your country. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you today.
It's an honor, sir. Thank you. A conversation with a hometown hero, and there on the right of your screen is the man who will take over command of the Indiana National Guard. He is Brigadier General Courtney Carr. He served in the Indiana National Guard for 20 years and most recently was a Deputy Director of Operations, Readiness, and Mobilization for the United States Army. Coming up, it's the plan to reshape the fleet of vehicles for Indianapolis. But could the council members sink the deal next month? We take questions directly to the man at the head of Vision Fleet. That's next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. On this Sunday after the Indianapolis 500, we turn our attention to the 500 cars on the road right now for the city of Indianapolis. I'm talking about the Vision Fleet electric cars replacing the city's older fleet of vehicles. That contract has come under intense scrutiny over the past few months. Complaints that it doesn't actually save the city money, and about a heavily redacted version first made public. Some city-county council members are threatening to void the deal. Now we're talking with the CEO of Vision Fleet, who is defending the contract with the city.
We do feel that City Council absolutely should be engaged in this process, not necessarily from a legal perspective, but just from an engagement perspective. We absolutely think this is a program that everybody should be involved with and proud of, and that includes the council and the mayor's office. So we've been reaching out to council for 2 months to help work with them to understand their concerns and see how we can knock those down. And let me tell you, every problem that's been identified to date, we've already found a solution for. First of all, on the redaction. So the Vision Fleet has spent over 7 years to develop this performance contracting model, which again has so many benefits to the city. Again, we're taking the risk, we make the investments to help them modernize their very old fleet. And Indianapolis has a fleet problem. It has a major problem of underinvestment. So on the redaction piece, what we did is we redacted the work that we put into this contract to set up this performance contract framework. We wanted to protect the investment that we made in that language. As soon as we found out that the redactions were an issue, the first thing I did is I emailed the unredacted contract in full to the city council and then to the press. So we released that immediately because, again, our company is open and transparent. I want no perceptions that we're trying to hide anything. An electric vehicle or a plug-in vehicle like this, they do cost more upfront. They cost maybe 30% more than a gasoline vehicle. But over time, their fuel, their operations, they save a lot of money. In fact, driving in a mile on electricity costs 1/6 the cost of a mile on gasoline. So over time, these vehicles are absolutely cheaper than a gasoline vehicle. Not just a new vehicle, but particularly these older vehicles that the city has and it dominates its fleet. Cost per mile. So when you think about all the miles these cars drive, it's costing the taxpayers 75 cents a mile. That's 75 cents every mile these cars drive. These vehicles are 65 cents a mile. So we're saving 10 cents a mile. Doesn't sound like a lot, 10 cents a mile, but when you add up all the miles that are going to be driven over the life of this contract, that's $7-8 million of savings. And Vision Fleet backs it up. We guarantee it. We are guaranteeing this savings of of about $7 million to the city. So frankly, I think the biggest loser if this project somehow gets disrupted is the city and the fleet, because it needs badly to modernize its fleet. Freedom Fleet to date is about only 5% of the 3,500 Indianapolis vehicle fleet. We've only dealt with 5%. What about the other 95%? What is the plan to upgrade and invest? And you're going to need to bring people like Vision Fleet into the city to help do that, or the council is going to have to spend tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade a fleet that is, frankly, one of the oldest and one of the least efficient in terms of its fuel efficiency in the entire country. So that's what the council has to address.
The CEO, in his own words, a council committee has already voted to approve suing the mayor's office, looking to end the contract with Vision Fleet. The full council is set to take up that measure in June. Coming up, the protests over the Religious Freedom Act and the calls to change the state Civil Rights Act. The new word from the State House that could reignite the debate. That's next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we bring in our political insiders, former State Democratic Party Chair Dan Parker, Republican consultant Jennifer Hollowell, and former State House reporter and the queen of Twitter, Mary Beth Schneider. That's who you are. That's right. Let's start with the announcement this week, of course, that the State House, there will be no study committee on the issue when it comes to the State Civil Rights Act. Is that a big mistake, or does that issue need to be studied and moved on?
I don't think it needs to be studied. They just need to do it. They need to get it passed, and this issue's been debated, and we know what we need to do, and the legislature just needs to go do it.
I don't think it matters as much whether or not they have a study committee, but that the discussions that need to happen are happening in communities and with the business community and with all the other stakeholders, so that there's a plan for this next session, because this issue is not going away. There's going to be state and national attention on it. We could be on center stage again. So I think that the study committee maybe is not necessary as long as the proper listening is taking place.
Mayor Beth, will this become a big issue, though, as we head into the 2016 gubernatorial race? Will this issue now pop up again? Will this be part of a campaign commercial?
It'll definitely pop up. It'll be in campaign commercials. They can fix that in January of 2016 if they want to. And I think they were smart not to do a study committee, because it just would have kept it being talked about with no action, just talk, for months and months and months. So yeah, I think Dan's right. They just need to do it, and I think they do have the votes to do it. They all recognize that this is an issue, and they're going to want it off the plate for the elections.
On the city level, of course, the contract with the Vision Fleet, they're converting our vehicles into electrical cars. The democratically controlled City County Council has called for a possible review of this contract. Does that contract need to be reviewed, or should we just proceed with it as is?
Well, I think every contract ought to be reviewed, and reviewed very closely before they go ahead with something. So I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, I think they have reviewed it. I think that what you see from the Democrats is misinformation and also this quick rush to file a lawsuit or something like that, which is going to cost the city a bunch of money. And the last time they did that, they lost. So we're spending money for no reason. But at the heart of it, you know, when Mayor Ballard came out with this, it's a very thoughtful approach, and it's partially driven by his time as a Marine, his passion for reducing our dependence on foreign oil, and moving the city to a greener way. And so by switching our fleet over to you know, hybrid, electric, other types of vehicles, that's what this is about. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about what that might mean in Department of Public Safety and with this contract.
Misinformation, Dan Harper?
Okay, my turn. First of all, this is a bipartisan criticism of this particular contract coming from both Republicans and Democrats on the City Council, number one. Number two, this issue really isn't about the issue that they're trying to deal with. It's not about the company, which is a good company. This is about the way the Ballard administration conducted itself in executing this particular contract, which that's going to be the issue. And it's also the reason why Joe Hogsett came out last week, candidate for mayor, and talked about ethics and transparency in contracting for the city. And it's going to be a critical issue this year. So the issue is really how the Ballard administration came out, and it was a Republican on the City Council who came out when they put the contract out initially and said, quote, it looked like a CIA document.
So is this about the process or the contract?
I think there may have been a knee-jerk reaction and more information. I will say that they didn't roll it out probably as smoothly as they could have. I think now that all the information is out there, you see a lot more people in agreement and understand what it is and why it is the way it is, which is legal, by the way. I think it's interesting that Dan wants to talk about Hogsett and contracts when, I mean, Hogsett has taken $2 million, maybe $3 million from folks who do business with city government, and there's certainly reasons for that. And he also has worked to kill the Criminal Justice Center, which the city paid the firm he works for quite a bit of money to do.
This is a reaction not only to this contract, but also the ROC and the criminal justice proposal. So this is a long-standing debate between the City Council and the mayor's office.
And this goes to show again that because we have Chuck Brewer, who's running as a Republican for mayor, and Joe Hogsett, who's running for a Democrat, politics are entering everything now that the Mayor Ballard does.
Politics have always entered everything.
But as we head into mayoral season, right, we're seeing politics.
And part of what you see is Hogsett is killing these deals or working to kill these deals because he wants to do them himself.
I keep waiting for somebody to say, pull the plug.
No, I mean, look,
Will they pull the plug on this contract?
Well, if somebody does, the city's going to owe a lot of money because the company has invested close to $10 million and only been paid $1 million by the city. So if anybody pulls the plug, it's going to cost money.
They absolutely shouldn't pull the plug.
It is
the
way the Ballard administration conducts business.
It makes sense.
So you can't pull the plug. What's the point then?
Why would you want to pull the plug when we're saving money?
You have to change
we're now in a position where we're getting cars replaced.
You have to change the process because all of this was done in the dark.
I want to ask you one more question. That is, of course, that the governor may announce officially that he will be running for governor for a second term. Good idea, bad idea? June the 18th is the date.
I think what it actually is a bad idea is doing it at a state party dinner. I would have done it at open public event where you could get people to come, because what reporters will say is that he was afraid of an open audience. But no, I don't think it's a bad idea for him to run. I think that when you're incumbent governor, you're always probably the best choice.
You didn't get the last
for
word
the
on
party.
this.
I think he had to answer the question and let people know that he's running. If I were advising him, I would have probably done it in a different way, but there's still time. Maybe he's going to do a public announcement and have the dinner.
So will Glenda come in after the 18th, do you think? Or before the 18th?
That's a question that's out there.
But you know all the answers.
Ringing endorsement there.
We sure hope so. We sure hope so.
Should there be a primary on both sides?
I don't think there will be one on the Republican side, and I think it would actually do Democrats some good to have a primary and get their candidates better known and sharpened, because right now the only thing they have going for themselves is I am not Mike Pence. I don't think that's enough to win.
I actually agree. I think the Democratic Party needs a primary. It needs to figure out what these candidates are for instead of what they're against. And the only way you can do that is sharpen your message through a primary process. So I think that they will all become better candidates for it.
Well, thank you so much. The conversation continues, as always, by going online. You can join the debate by following Mary Beth, Dan, Jennifer, Lara, and Abdul. And make sure you follow them on our new Twitter account at Indy This Week. Indianapolis This Week continues after the break. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. Our Storm Team 6 meteorologists will watch the weather for you all day today. Stay up to date with the RTV6 app. For all of us here at the Indianapolis This Week, have a great Sunday.